Before Chris Bowen pulled out of the race this afternoon, though, I spoke to Labor frontbencher from New South Wales, Linda Burney, about the leadership and where the party now needs to go. Linda Burney, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. So who will you be backing in the Labor leadership contest?
Well, I'm not sure if that's the only discussion we should be having. I think both Anthony and Chris are fantastic candidates. They both bring enormous experience, highly intelligent, articulate, and understand the Labor Party and are true Labor Party people. Clearly, I'm from the left faction, and I respect both people, and whoever is the winner, I'll be working with those people or that person as a team player.
So you're genuinely undecided, or just preferring to keep your view fairly tightly held?
No, I said I'm from the left faction, and I think when you look at the people that left Labor on the weekend, particularly in Queensland, I think Anthony is the person that can relate to those people mostly. But like I say, David, I respect both men. I think they both are enormously talented, and whatever the outcome is, I'll be working with as a team player. But clearly, I think Anthony Albanese is the person that can relate the best at this point in time for the people that left us on Saturday.
Now, just tease that out. Why do you say that? What does he bring to the table that might win back some of those who've left Labor at this election?
Well, when you have a look at what happened on Saturday night, you cannot divorce that from the Palmer stroke One Nation effect. I mean, in some seats, the combination of those two votes were up in their 20%. In one of the seats in the Hunter, we had One Nation at 21%. So that factor is important, and I don't think there is enough focus, particularly from the Fourth Estate, on what that actually meant. And I just read an article with Clive Palmer talking about he didn't care about winning Senate seats, it was about punishing Labor. And, you know, whatever that motivation is there. But you cannot divorce what happened with many of the people that our policies sought to embrace actually voted for the coalition in a number of seats, particularly in seats the further north that you went.
And I'll come back to the policy matters in a moment, but on the deputy leadership, I saw Chris Bowen yesterday mentioned your name, amongst others, as a potential deputy. Is that something that would interest you?
Look, my job is very much about working as a team player. And you might think, well, of course she's going to say that. But you know me, and you know that I will work as a contributor and as a competent, very able person within whatever the shadow ministry looks like.
But if it comes to a vote, would you nominate for the deputy leadership?
I am not making any decisions like that, and I don't expect that to be the case. I'm very focused on what I've been doing. I am incredibly fearful, David, of what the re-election of a Morrison government means for the rollout of the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Are they going to continue to use that as a cash cow to prop up budgets? And I listened to Alan Tudge very carefully the other day on his comments on Indigenous affairs and welfare. It scared me to think that there is going to be an approach by this government that will be about not making sure that the most vulnerable people in our society get their needs and get the support that they require from government, particularly in the rollout of National Disability Insurance Scheme.
OK, look, so that's clearly a priority for you. What about some of the policy reasons why Labor's vote dropped, particularly in Queensland, but also in parts of Western Sydney there as well, the seat of Lindsay, and a big swing in Macquarie as well? What do you put that down to on the policy front?
I think that's the key question, David, for the party to look at, as people have said, in the coming weeks and months. And we need to hear not just from the people that were returned on Saturday night. We also needed to hear it from the people that lost their seats. We lost some brilliant people like Cathy O'Toole, you know, up there in Herbert, people like Ross Hart down there in Bass, people like Susan Lamb in Longman. Really fine people, Justine Keys in Braddon. We need to hear from them on what they think went wrong. But clearly there were a lot of policies, and all of them really hard worked on, all of them designed to make Australia a better place, including policies on climate change. But somehow or other, people didn't hear them or didn't understand them. And I also think that there was the massive issue in North Queensland about jobs and the symbolism of the Adani mine and what that meant. Whether people were right or wrong, it's really not the point. The point for Labor to understand is that there are people who would naturally have voted for us that for some reason did not, despite our policy offerings, the great policies in education, health, dental, childcare, in infrastructure, National Disability Insurance Scheme. We need to understand why they didn't vote for us and act accordingly and work really hard to get those people back.
You mentioned the Adani mine there today. Anastasia Palaszczuk, just days after this result in Queensland, quite swiftly has said she's frustrated with her own department's delays on this. She wants some swifter decisions on this. I mean, do you think Labor needs to shift its position on Adani, or at least clear up where it stands on Adani?
Look, that's not for me to say. I think that needs to be obviously part of what we look at properly over the next weeks and months. And there are people who are much better versed than me on the intricacies of that. What I do know, though, is that we have lost the seat of Herbert. And despite the efforts of Cathy O'Toole restating time and time again that her priority was jobs, for some reason that message was not heard.
Franking credits too. There's been a lot of attention on this. Government dubbed it the retirees' tax during the campaign. I know Anthony Albanese's already saying, you know, perhaps existing investment should be grandfathered. Do you think there needs to be some change on that policy as well?
I think that's obviously one of the policies that has had a lot of discussion since Saturday night. I think the intention and the reason for that policy were the absolute right ones in terms of making sure there was money for schools and hospitals. But clearly it hurt us in some seats, I think, and we need to have a very close look at it. I think that the really important points of having adequate funding for schools, adequate investment in health, and particularly the policies around early childhood education were the right policies. It is the way you mix them, the way that you reprioritise, and once again, you know, I will be part of that discussion going forward. It's not for me to be on your show this evening and make predictions and make anything like that.
Let me just ask you finally, Linda Burney, the big picture, I guess. Who should Labor be trying to represent? Where do you think it needs to be targeting its message?
Look, that's a key question, David, and my answer to that is that we need to be able to talk meaningfully to everyone, whether it's Seats like the seat of Barton, which I'm in, which we got to swing to, incredibly multicultural electorate, a diverse electorate, wide range of ages and university educated as well as unskilled. But we also need to be able to talk to regional Australia. And it seems to me that the job of the party now, and it is what exactly that we are talking about, is to look at what our policy offerings, how they were rolled out. It is not about apportioning blame. I think Bill Shorten and Tanya Plebiscite and the leadership team did an amazing job through the election. They couldn't have worked harder. But we need to think about how we roll things out, what we rolled out, and whether or not they're still relevant to the people we need to reach.
Linda Burney, appreciate your time this afternoon. Thanks very much for joining us. Of course, since recording that interview there with Linda Burney, we saw Chris Bowen pull out of the leadership race, and now, just in the last few minutes, Joel Fitzgibbon, who is the the Right faction convener for New South Wales Right in the Labor Party, he too has cleared up. He's not running, and he's throwing his support behind Anthony Albanese very publicly as well. In this statement, he says, despite our loss last Saturday, the Federal Parliamentary Labor Party remains rich with outstanding talent. One of those great talents is Chris Bowen, and he would have made an excellent parliamentary leader. With Chris out of the contest, I'm now free to put my support behind Anthony Albanese. I've had a long discussion with Albo about my demands that the party strengthens its focus on regional Australia, provides it with a meaningful seat at the party's decision-making table. Wonder who that might be. And engages more on the issues which matter most to working people living in our great regions. He says, I'm satisfied that a Labor Party led by Anthony Albanese will provide that focus, and he'll listen closely to the needs and aspirations of our country people. As a consequence, I will not be part of the leadership contest. I wish Albo the very best and look forward to working with him and the team to rebuild Labor's support in regional Australia and amongst blue-collar workers. What's interesting about that, apart from the fairly blatant pitch from Joel Fitzgibbon there for a seat at the table, or a continuing seat at the decision-making table and all of this, throwing your support behind Anthony Albanese before Jim Chalmers from the right in Queensland decides whether he's going to run or not. But we are seeing more support piling in behind Anthony Albanese, who clearly is the overwhelming favourite now to become the Labor leader, with or without a contest for the job.